Hey up, Pop it, you alright?
Hello and welcome back to Relive the League. This is episode 9. How time flies, eh? Episode 9.
Especially when you're having fun.
And fun is what we are having. And I'm Ben.
And I am Mike.
And we continue to take you on a journey back in time as we bring you game week by game week all the action from the 92-93 Premier League season.
And then beyond as we get further. This week we've got another very, very special guest commentator joining us. We have James Allen. And I know one or two of you out there, I'm sure you've heard that name before. Yes, that is the James Allen, the 2011 Bromborough Bulldogs Basketball Club Most Fun Player Award winner.
Guilty. Isn't that James Allen, the guy who, when he was in year 11, had to fill in the back of his own leaver shirt because not enough people signed it? Tick!
But he does have many more strings to his bow. He's a comedian and podcast extraordinaire with the Culture Ultras podcast, which is very, very funny, with Theon, who's going to be joining us in a couple of weeks to cover one of his beloved Middlesbrough games. Also, if you follow them or at Cultures Pod on Twitter, they're very, very funny on there. And if you follow James himself at JamesAllen27, that'd be very much appreciated from us because they are very funny guys. We're hopefully going to be appearing on something with them very soon, which I know I'm very excited about. Don't know about Ben, but I'm sure he is as excited as me.
I get excited about anything, Mike.
Unfortunately, I know that all too well, mate. Yeah.
So the reason that we're doing this is just to remind you and show you how football was back in the 90s. And a great example of that was the Wimbledon Blackburn game later in this episode. A game which is 3 players sent off. Yes,
beautiful.
Vinny Jones
Truly beautiful.
Is making his debut today, his home debut for Wimbledon this week. So it doesn't take a genius to work out which game has a red card involved. So the QPR Middlesbrough game this week as well. Actually, I asked Mike to describe this game in 3 words, and he said, "Mother trucking scintillating."
Scintillating. Ben's got issues with that word. And I also didn't say trucking either. We're just keeping it nice and clean for the purposes of this, in case there's any little bands watching. But no, that is one of the best games of football I've ever had the pleasure of putting my eyeballs upon, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you.
One of
it deserves to be out there.
It's one of 3 6-goal thrillers that we've got for you today. And also make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. While you are here watching this, it helps us out, and it also lets you know of any future videos that we post as well. Join us on Twitter at PremStarsHQ. Plenty of action on there on a daily basis. And TikTok too for the kids, which is PremStars8. So let's press that rewind button and go back and show you the action for episode 9. So let's press that rewind button, Mike, and let's relive the league.
I will see you there.
First up this week, it was on Tuesday night, and it was Blackburn in Everton's game in hand at Ewood Park. Blackburn with a chance to go top of the league with a win.
Blackburn remain unchanged from the win against Arsenal at the weekend, with Bobby Mims in goal, Colin Hendry, Kevin Moran, Alan Wright and David May at the back. 3 in midfield with Mark Atkins, Tim Sherwood and Tony Dobson, and Stuart Ripley, Mike Newell and Alan Shearer up front. On the bench, Matt Dickens, Roy Wegley and Jason Wilcox. For Everton, Neville Southall in goal, Alan Harper, Gary Ablett, Dave Watson, Mark Ward and Andy Hinchcliffe at the back. 2 in midfield with John Ebrell and Barry Horn, and Peter Beardsley behind Tony Cottee, who's coming in for Robert Barzica, and Paul Rideout in for Mo Johnston up front. On the bench, Jason Cason, Matt Jackson and Robert Barzica. Blackburn started the better of the two sides today, and after 12 minutes, David May went on a marauding run through the centre of the pitch and picked a perfect through ball for striker Shearer, whose ankles were clipped in a box by Andy Hinchcliffe. Penalty to Blackburn. God knows what Shearer's got on his head there. Maybe took a bang. I haven't seen anything of it. Looks like a few stitches, but it hasn't affected his concentration. 1-0 to Blackburn. A great start for Blackburn in a match they need to win to take that top spot, and a great start for Shearer equaling David White's 7 goals for the season so far. Then we had the most beautiful goal of the season so far as a cross came in and Barzica headed a ball against the bar. Cottee headed it, Mims saved it, he bobbled one back and somehow it went over the line, and Bobby Mims was not happy with that at all. The original header from Barzica, who's had to come on in the 7th minute, unfortunately with Mark Ward having to go off with a broken leg. Everton were the better of the two sides and were playing some wonderful football. And in the 39th minute, after a long ball forward and some great hold-up play on the right, the ball found itself with Barzica, who megs Mark Atkins, who was covering for the labouring Alan Wright, who played a wonderful ball in behind Cottee, and there was John Ebrell to put it past Bobby Mims to make it 2-1 to the Toffees. Some great play by the ball down the wing. A lovely cross just behind Cottee, who would have loved to have got his second for the game. But Ebrell with a fine finish, and you could argue Mims should have popped that one round the post. Into the second half then, and Everton were still by far the better team, mainly due to the playmaking of Peter Beardsley, who performed some kind of 720 swivel turn here and passed the ball out to Tony Cottee, who tried his luck from 25 yards out, didn't really trouble Bobby Mims, who did well to turn it around the post. Polishman Barzica was having a great game since coming on, and his link-up play with Peter Beardsley was almost telepathic. Great ball out wide there. Beardsley passing it back to the pole, and then a great tackle by David May after a missed one by Colin Hendry. The ball found itself with John Ebrell, who gave it back to Beardsley out wide, who tried his luck. I'm not sure whether he was popping that on Rideout's head or in the far post, but he achieved neither. Blackburn were never going to sit back and let Everton get the points though, were they? And after some great play involving Mark Atkins and Roy Wegley, the ball found itself with Jason Wilcox, who popped a ball in. Shearer nodded it up in the air, and Mike Newell with a tame header picked up by Southall, and then Shearer tried to show strength against the big man and got nowhere. With about 15 minutes to go though, Blackburn's pressure finally took its toll. After some great play by Alan Wright and Jason Wilcox down the wing, the ball came across and then Shearer did a thigh bobbler over the flailing Southall. Regardless though, it's 2-2. Can they push on for the winner to get that top spot? Shearer now with 8 goals in 8 games, the top scorer in the Premier League. What a signing. Rovers kept applying some serious pressure, and later on, Colin Hendry hoofed a ball upfield. A great flick on by Roy Wegley, and there was Shearer, but a phenomenal save by Neville Southall. Still 2-2. Can they push on for that winner? With just under 10 minutes to go on the clock, Everton captain Dave Watson went for a casual stroll up the middle of the pitch and then found John Ebrell out on the left wing. He tried to make some space, looked up and saw Tony Cottee play the ball into him. He was intercepted by Kevin Moran, who got the ball and gave it out wide to Mike Newell. He looked up, tried to play a ball into the middle, but it was expertly cut out by Matt Jackson. Then The ball found itself at the feet of Robert Barzic, who went on one of his trademark runs and beat Alan Wright, cut him inside, played the ball into Peter Beardsley, who looked up and found the returning runner Barzic himself, who passed the ball across, and there was Tony Cottee to pop it into an open net to win the game for Everton, 3-2. Everton with some wonderful football, akin to European Cup runners-up Sampdoria. Some phenomenal passing, great vision, lovely runs, and then an amazing open goal finish from 3 yards out in front of the travelling fans. What a victory for the Toffees.
Well, a broken leg for Mark Ward was the dampener for Everton, who gave an excellent display to shade a cracking game. Alan Shearer made 8 goals in 8 games, was upstaged by the 2 goals from Tony Cottee and the brilliant Peter Beardsley. 3-2 to Everton. Right, and kicking us off this week is Manchester United travelling to White Hart Lane to take on Tottenham Hotspur. Fergie's Red Devils arrive here as the informed team in the Premier League at the moment, with 5 wins on the bounce.
Tottenham line up with Ian Walker in goal. The solid Neil Ruddock and Jason Cundy at the back, with Pat Van Den Hauw and Stone Cold Dean Austin completing the back four. Wonder Kid Andy Turner comes in for Vinnie Samways, Andy Gray, Steve Sedgley in for Darren Anderton, and Paul Allen in midfield, with Gordon Dury and Teddy Sheringham up front. On the bench, Eric Torsvet, Dave Tuttle and John Hendry. For Man United, Peter Schmeichel in goal. Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Clayton Blackmore and Dennis Irwin at the back. Midfield, Paul Ince, Darren Ferguson, Andrzej Kanchelskis and Ryan Giggs, with Brian McClare and Mark Hughes up front. On the bench, Gary Walsh, Lee Martin and Danny Wallace. The first bit of action today came after a Neil Ruddock thwack up the pitch, which evaded everybody and went to Teddy Sheringham, who went round Peter Schmeichel with far too much ease, but then whacked the ball straight into Gary Pallister's gonad. Jory tried to create another chance, but Darren Ferguson was there to clean it up. Then Clayton Blackmore and Ryan Giggs combined to set up Paul Ince, who unleashed an absolute thundergibbon from 30 yards, which was a great save from Ian Walker. Then from the resulting corner, it went to the back stick, and there was Mark Hughes, but his tame header landed in Walker's hands. And then, on the stroke of half-time, Peter Schmeichel hoofed one forward. Stone Cold Dean Austin tried to chest one down, slipped over. Ryan Giggs got hold of it. Megs Jason Cundy. Ruddock tried to chase it down, but was towing a caravan. He rounded Ian Walker to make it 1-0 to Manchester United. And, well, there's nothing else I can say. Over to you, Ryan.
The ball out with one of his long kicks. And then I think the right back, Dean Austin, he just chested it down and slipped. So I just thought I could get in there and pushed it past the last defender and then round the keeper. But I thought I'd pushed it too far, so I had to keep the shot hard and low, so I managed to get the score goal.
Thanks for that, Ryan. Genuinely couldn't have put it better myself. In the 52nd minute, Andy Gray got the ball in midfield, found Teddy Sheringham out in space on the right, who looked up, crossed the ball in. Peter Schmeichel must have had fairy liquid on his gloves, and the ball went to Gordon Dury at the back post, who made it 1-1. And that's how it stayed. But I don't think the skill Ryan Giggs showed during his goal should be understated whatsoever. Phenomenal bit of skill from the youngster. I'm sure, I'll hang my hat on it, this kid's got a bright future.
And Man United were by far the better team today, but failed to come away with all 3 points. They remain in the top 4 with Tottenham down in the bottom half. Big thanks to Ryan Giggs for the guest commentary on today's game.
Cheers, Ryan.
And next up, we've got the unbeaten Ipswich Town travelling to Boundary Park to take on Oldham. This is a ground that Ipswich do not like coming to. They have not got a single point in any of their last 5 visits here.
And Oldham line up with John Holworth in goal, Steve Redmond, Richard Jobson, Neil Poynton, Gunnar Haller and Paul Bernard at the back. In midfield, Mike Milligan and Nick Henry. And then up front, Ian Marshall, Ian Olney and Graham Sharp. On the bench, John Keeley, Neil Adams and Roger Palmer. For Ipswich, Craig Forrest in goal, Glenn Pennyfather, Neil Thompson, Phil Whelan, David Linigan and Eddie Yowds coming in for Frank Yallop. At the back, in midfield, Mick Stockwell, Jason Dazelle, Gavin Johnson and John Walk, with Chris Kiwomya, who's coming in for Geraint Williams, up front on his own. On the bench are Clive Baker, Frank Yallop and Paul Goddard. Ipswich are unbeaten this season, but it's quite difficult to see why. They're not much firepower up front, and on today's evidence, they've not much in defence either. Ian Marshall making it 1-0 there from a Nick Henry corner. They made it 2 after Phil Whelan tried to clear the ball twice, but could only find Graham Sharp on the edge of the box, who fired home. The third came from another set piece. It was whipped in, Gunnar Haller headed it, it hit John Walk, then hit Craig Forrest and went into the net. Ipswich did get themselves one back though, but it wasn't one of the attackers, it wasn't just any other player, it was John Walk yet again. Oldham then made it 4 after Steve Redmond got the ball. He floated a ball into the box, and there was Nick Henry, the man who usually gets the assist, to help himself to one. Ipswich did get a second late on, but again, it wasn't through any of the attackers. It was Neil Thompson, the left back. 4-2, unbeaten run over.
Well, that must have been a great trip down memory lane for our super fan, Neil. I hope you enjoyed that one. Oldham have just demolished Ipswich, bagging 4 goals, taking that unbeaten tag from them. And this is now the 6th time Ipswich have come away from Boundary Park with not a single point. It's definitely their bogey ground. Anyway, a great win for Oldham. 4-2. Next up, we are at Bramall Lane to see Sheffield United take on the Arsenal. The Blades have found a way to beat both Man United and Liverpool at home this season already. Can they find a 3 points against Arsenal today?
To do so, they're lining up with Alan Kelly in goal, coming in for Simon Tracy. A back four of Brian Gale, Paul Beasley, Tom Cowan and Carl Bradshaw. In midfield, Kevin Gage, John Gannon, Paul Rogers and Dane Whitehouse, with Brian Dean and Adrian Littlejohn up front. On the bench is just Alan Cork and Glyn Hodges. For Arsenal, David Seaman in goal, a back four of Tony Adams, Steve Bold, Nigel Winterburn and Lee Dixon. In midfield, John Jensen, Paul Merson, Ray Parler and Anders Limpar, who's coming in for 18-year-old Ian Selly, with Alan Smith and Ian Wright up front. On the bench is Alan Miller, Andy Linigan and 19-year-old Mark Flats. It took till the second half today to get some action and note. It was just after half-time when Adrian Littlejohn got the ball on the right wing and led Nigel Winterburn a merry dance, going one way, the next way, the other way. Winterburn slipped over, Littlejohn put the cross in, Brian Dean headed on, and there was Dane Whitehouse to smack home to make it 1-0 to Sheffield United. They beat everyone at home. Then, late on, Steve Bold got the ball, passed it to Lee Dixon, who chipped it into the box and found Ian Wright to rescue a point for the Arsenal. 1-1.
Yeah, and that's Ian Wright with his 5th goal in 7 games to steal a point for Arsenal. So close for Sheffield United, but they couldn't hold off Arsenal's late pressure. Point shared, 1-1. And next up at Loftus Road, we've got Queen's Park Rangers taking on Middlesbrough. Both teams going well this season, both sitting nicely in the top 6. So hopefully an entertaining afternoon at Loftus Road for us.
QPR line up with Jan Steshkal in goal, Alan McDonald, Darren Peacock and Clive Wilson at the back. In midfield, Simon Barker, Justin Channing, Andy Impey, Ray Wilkins and Andy Sinton, Gary Penrice and Les Ferdinand up front. On the bench, Tony Roberts, Danny Maddox and Ian Holloway. For Middlesbrough, Brian Horn in goal, a back four of Alan Kernahan, Derek White, Jimmy Phillips and Chris Morris. Jamie Pollock comes into midfield to replace Andy Peake, to partner Robbie Mustoe. Tommy Wright and John Hendry on the wings, with Paul Wilkinson and Willie Faulkner up front. On the bench are Ian Ironside, Jonathan Gittins and Bernie Slaven. The first bit of action we had today was a free kick to Middlesbrough in the first half, and there's not many better men to have looming over the ball than Jimmy Phillips, the dead ball specialist. He whipped the ball in, it landed at the feet of John Hendry with a great touch and swivel, just missed the post. Steshkal was left standing. QPR's first chance came courtesy of a Jan Steshkal goal kick. Les Ferdinand flicked the ball on. It found itself with Andy Impey, with a great touch found Andy Sinton, who laid in Gary Penrice on the edge of the box, and he fired just wide. What a goal that would have been for his first Premier League goal. Now, let's just take a little second to admire Gary Penrice's tash. The next passage of play was truly stunning. Header by Maddox, intercepted by Faulkner, flick on by Wilkins, intercepted by Faulkner again. Impey went for the ball. Simon Barker got it. Give the ball to Ray Wilkins, who looked up. First time pass. Found the runner Les Ferdinand. Intercepted by goalkeeper Brian Horn. He's off his line. Sinton spotted it. He's woeful effort. And Brian Horn gave us a little bit extra just because he knew the cameras was on him. Good save, Brian. Horn threw the ball out left to left back Jimmy Phillips, who ambled up the wing at his own pace, cut the ball inside to Robbie Mustoe, who found Bernie Slaven, gave the ball back to Alan Kernahan with a one-touch, laid the ball forward and found the run of Chris Morris, but he was denied by Jan Steshkal. Still 0-0. Middlesbrough were the favourites to take the lead. And from the resulting Jimmy Phillips corner, a deft header at the near post by captain Alan Kernahan gave Borough that deserved lead, 1-0. Captain Kernahan's second goal of the season, always Mr. Reliable. The Borough fans ecstatic taking a 1-0 lead into half-time. However, shortly after the break, QPR got on the ball again. Ray Wilkins picked out centre-half, definite future England centre-half, Darren Peacock in the right-back position. He looked up, saw the runner Gary Penrice, who got onto the ball, fired at goal, but a great save by Brian Horn. One day, the Super Tash will get that goal. Then, in the 57th minute, Jan Steshkal wellied a ball upfield towards Big Les. He won the ball in the air against Alan Kernahan. It went to Andy Impey, who gave it back to Ferdinand, back to Impey. He turned round, gave the ball to Justin Channon, who looked up, gave the ball back to Andy Impey, who raced into the box, but found no room. Gave the ball back to Andy Sinton, tried to put a cross in. It was a great clearance by Derek White. Robbie Mustoe tried to clear on further, only found Ray Wilkins, who gave the ball out on the left again to Andy Sinton. He looked up, put a ball in to Big Les, 1-1. A superb centre-forwards goal from arguably the best centre-forward in the Premier League. But 1 minute later, Derek White won the ball in midfield. He found Bernie Slaven out on the left wing with a header inside, found Tommy Wright, who found a gap and headed on goal and made it 2-1 to Borough. What a signing Tommy Wright's been. Oh my God. A few moments later, there was some more wonderful play up the other end of the pitch. Danny Maddox got the ball, played the ball inside to Simon Barker. He somehow came away from a challenge with the ball. He looked up, gave the ball out wide to Andy Sinton. Now, corner to QPR. But Andy Sinton and his magic disappearing shots, for some reason, thought it was a throw-in. As you can see with all the QPR fans behind in their superb 90s gams, just pause that and have a great look at all that fashion there. If any people from that see yourselves, get in touch. They tell Andy Sinton it's a corner. He realises he's obviously going to take a corner over a throw-in. Then he steps back. The woman with a megaphone there for some reason starts admiring his thighs. He whips the corner in and Big Les heads it just wide. Still 2-1 the Borough. 73rd minute, Peacock got the ball, give it out wide to Ian Holloway, looked up with an amazing long ball up the wing, found the runner Gary Penrice, who, superb skill, gets himself into the box, through the keeper's legs, 2-2. He goes up for a cuddle with his adoring fans, and he deserves it. The divine moustache finally breaks that Premier League duck. Just over 5 minutes later, Middlesbrough got themselves another dangerous free kick in another dangerous area. This time it wasn't Jimmy Phillips though, it was Tommy Wright who whipped it into the back post, and there was Willie Faulkner to give Borough the lead for the third time today. 3-2 to Middlesbrough. QPR kept on pushing for an equaliser, and in the very final minute, madness ensued. Ian Holloway got the ball and put a deep cross in. It was cleared by Morris out towards Andy Sinton on the wing. He tried to beat John Hendry. John Hendry pushed him over. Free kick to QPR, the very final minute. We've got our friends from the 90s in the background there again. Hello to you all. Andy Sinton's found his shot, so I don't know. Yeah, they're a little bit longer now, aren't they? Right, anyway. Compose ourselves. Sinton, last minute, free kick. He whips the ball in. It lands with Danny Maddox. Oh, bad touch. He gives the ball out to the edge of the box. Wilkins out again to Holloway. He puts in another brilliant cross. Impey! Oh, bar! Is it in? Line! Oh, it's cleared by Phillips. Morris has got the ball. Sinton. Oh, he's decked Sinton in the box. Penalty! It's a penalty!
Wow.
Last minute penalty! What's going on? Oh, the QPR fans are going mad behind the goal. Impey, I don't know, did he score? Did it go over the line? Let's have a look. Oh, what a save. No, it didn't go over the line. What a clearance by Phillips. This is madness. Why did Morris do that? He has absolutely decked him there. Oh, I thought it was going to be Big Les, but it's Andy Sinton with his amazing disappearing shots. Oh, and I thought the keeper had got it. 3-3. What a game of football. The Premier League is unreal, isn't it?
Classic FM is the logo on the Queen's Park Rangers top, and classic is what this game was. Mike, you've exhausted me with that game. It was full of everything.
You're exhausted.
3-3. Next up, we've got Sheffield Wednesday, who are playing in Europe now for the first time in 29 years. And they played midweek against Spora Luxembourg, and they absolutely destroyed them 8-1. Brilliant midweek performance by Sheffield Wednesday, who now travel to Carrow Road to take on the high-flying Canaries, Norwich City, who sit proudly at the top of the table. How can they get on?
Norwich line up with Brian Gunn in goal, Rob Newman, Ian Butterworth, who's in for John Paulston, Mark Bowen and Ian Culverhouse at the back. In midfield, Jeremy Goss, Gary Megson, Ian Crook and Super David Phillips. And up front, Mark Robbins and Chris Sutton. On the bench, Mark Walton, Darryl Such and Darren Beckford. For Sheffield Wednesday, Chris Woods in goal, Peter Shirtliff, Nigel Worthington, Viv Anderson and Danny Wilson coming in for the unfortunate Paul Warhurst, who got stretchered off against Spora Luxembourg in midweek, having 3 goals in 2 games. Carlton Palmer, John Harkes, Chris Waddle and Chris Bart-Williams make the midfield up. And up front are Mark Bright and player manager Trevor Francis, who comes in for Graham Hyde, who bagged a goal at the weekend. On the bench, Kevin Pressman, Nigel Pearson back from injury and Nigel Jampson. Just the 1 goal at Carrow Road today. In the 44th minute, David Phillips slung a long throw in and found Mark Robbins on the left wing. He held the ball up between 2 Sheffield Wednesday defenders superbly, put a cross in, and there was Rob Newman to power ahead of home past the helpless Chris Woods.
Well, that victory sets a club record successive wins in the top division. But my only gripe I have here, Mike, is the atmosphere. Norwich are going well, 5 wins on the bounce, top of the table. Where is that carnival-like atmosphere? They're averaging less than 14,000 fans per home game. If you want to see success here, Norwich fans, come and get behind your team. Norwich 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0. The current champions of England, Leeds United, travel to the Dell to take on Southampton. Leeds have not won on the travels yet this season, but with how poor the Saints have started, I'm sure they'll be looking for all 3 points today.
Southampton line up with Tim Flowers in goal. At the back, Kevin Moore, Richard Hall in for the superb Ken Moncap, Francis Benali and Jason Dodd. In midfield, Terry Hurlock, Matt Le Tissier, Perry Groves and Nicky Banger, who comes in for Neil Maddison. Up front, David Speedy and Kerry Dixon, who's replacing Ian Dowan. On the bench, Ian Andrews, Jeff Kenner and Neil Maddison. And for Leeds, John Lukic in goal. At the back, Chris Fairclough, Chris White. And after all, it's Dave Weatherall and Tony DeRigo. In midfield, David Batty, Steve Hodge in for Rod Wallace, Gary McAllister, Gordon Strachan in for Cantona, and Gary Speed. Up front, Lee Chapman on his own. On the bench, Mervyn Day, Scott Sellers, and Carl Shutt. Just before half-time, Matt Le Tissier floated in a through ball to Perry Groves, who touched it inside DeRigo. DeRigo nearly took his head off. He nodded it down and smashed home past Lukic to make it 1-0 to the Saints, sending the fans into raptures, taking a lead against the champions. With around 7 minutes to go on the clock, Leeds got themselves a corner. Scott Sellers swung the ball in. A few people tried to clear it. Didn't really go anywhere, and then the ball bounced free. Chris Fairclough challenged Hurlock on the edge of the box, and it came to the feet of Gary Speed, who smashed home to equalise for Leeds. The fans are ecstatic. A rescue point for the champions, but Southampton letting a lead go again.
And Southampton are struggling this season. Still just a 1 win in 9 games for them, and now slipping into the bottom 3. A point rescued for Leeds though, 1-1. And next up we've got Crystal Palace, who are looking for that first Premier League win, and they travel to Goodison Park to take on Everton, who had a brilliant midweek victory against Blackburn Rovers.
Just one change for Everton after the win against Rovers. Southall in goal, a back four of Alan Harper, Gary Ablett, Dave Watson and Andy Hinchcliffe, with John Ebrell and Barry Horn in midfield. Peter Beagrie replacing Mark Ward, who had to come off with a broken leg. Peter Beardsley, Tony Cotty and Paul Rideout. On the bench, Jason Caton, Matt Jackson and Mo Johnston. And for Crystal Palace, Nigel Martin in goal, John Humphrey, Eric Young, Lee Sinnott and Gareth Southgate at the back. In midfield, Chris Coleman comes in for Jeff Thomas, Simon Osborne and Eddie McGoldrick. And a front three of John Solarco, Paul Williams and Chris Armstrong. On the bench, Paul Held, Darren Patterson and 21-year-old youngster Stanley Collymore. After a very impressive win over Blackburn Rovers in midweek, you'd expect Everton to be the favourites over Crystal Palace today. But two people had different plans in mind, and they were John Solarco and Chris Armstrong. It only took 8 minutes for John Solarco to work his magic. He played a wonderful crossing and a magnificent diving header from Chris Armstrong to make it 1-0. Then, after 17 minutes, Solarco found Armstrong's run, played a wonderful through ball, who tapped it past Neville Southall to knock it into an open net to make it 2-0 to Palace.
And it's great to see John Solarco back terrorising defenders, showing that type of form he showed before his horrific injury last season. Let's hope Graham Taylor is keeping an eye on him. 2 great assists from the fresh-faced 23-year-old today, and also 2 goals from Chris Armstrong, making it 4 goals in 2 games. Crystal Palace have got their first Premier League win. And next up, we've got Blackburn Rovers travelling to Wimbledon. We've got second in the league against second from bottom. Blackburn, they haven't lost on the travels yet this season, so going to Wimbledon, you're expecting all 3 points to go back to Ewood Park. Let's see how it turns out.
Wimbledon line up with Hans Sagers in goal, Dean Blackwell, John Scales, Gary Elkins, who's in for Roger Joseph, and Warren Barton at the back. In midfield, Neil Ardley comes in for Teddy Gibson, Vinnie Jones and Robbie Earle. And up front, Andy Clark, John Fashanu, Auga, and Dean Oldsworth. On the bench, Neil Sullivan, Scott Fitzgerald and Paul Miller. For Blackburn, Bobby Mims in goal, Colin Hendry, Kevin Moran, Alan Wright and David May at the back. In midfield, Mark Atkins, Tim Sherwood and Tony Dobson. And up front, Stuart Ripley, Mike Newell and Alan Shearer. On the bench, Matt Dickens, Keith Hill and Roy Wegley. In the 17th minute, Hans Sagers whacked a ball up the pitch. It landed on the head of John Fashanu, who flicked it onto himself, and then went to Dean Oldsworth, touched through a defender's legs, and there was Neil Ardley to smash on to make it 1-0. Then, after 32 minutes, Stuart Ripley went through the middle, found Alan Shearer, who smashed home against something that bounced the ball back out to him to join in on the celebrations. I know what you're thinking. That's half an hour of lovely football, 2 lovely goals. But then, on the 37th minute, Vinnie Jones, making his second debut for Wimbledon, decided to get himself involved in a tussle with Kevin Moran. It was a rather, well, Moran didn't like it. Tim Sherwood didn't like it. The ref marauded over. Vinnie Jones tried to walk away. He got himself in the book 37 minutes into his second Wimbledon debut. But unlike Vinnie Jones, he didn't let that lie. He walked back level with the referee, and he said something, and he kept saying something. The ref took a lot of umbrage to it. So what happened? Vinnie Jones, 37 minutes into his Wimbledon debut, second yellow card, into a red, early bath for you, Vinnie. John Fashanu not happy at all. Dean Oldsworth acting as peacemaker. Warren Barton, he's stumped. Robbie Earle, he's trying to get an explanation. The only thing that's happening is Vinnie's running that bath. Then, just after half-time, Martin Bodden was delving in his pocket again, but he should have been on the phone filing assault charges, because Tony Dobson, well, he did this to Dean Blackwell. I don't know how his legs stayed together in one piece. Blackwell, fair play to him, he stayed on. Dobson didn't know. He's joining Vinnie in that bath. Wimbledon must be used to playing with 10 men by now. Blackburn weren't. They panicked, and they got a late chance. Holdsworth got the ball in the box, smashed it towards goal, and Mike Newell fisted it away with 2 perfect outcomes for him. He potentially saves a point for Blackburn, and he gets to join Vinnie and Tony with that muscle-soaked Radox in the back. Penalty to Wimbledon to win it. Fashanu's the man, but he's not. Bobby Mims was there to keep it out, and Hendry dealt with a returning cross. Somehow Blackburn have, well, down to 9 men, still got themselves a point. Wimbledon getting themselves a good point, and that's championship form by Blackburn.
So when we started doing all of this, we thought, let's go for a trip down memory lane ourselves, and let's see how football was, how it was proper, the good old tackles, the good old fisticuffs, and that is what we got today. 3 red cards, but points were shared. Blackburn failing to keep that pressure on Norwich up at the top, but the remaining second, Shearer with his 9th goal of the season. But Wimbledon get a point, second from bottom. Over to next week against Liverpool.
Now to Villa Park for Aston Villa versus Liverpool. And James Allen brings us all the action.
Liverpool stumbled to Villa Park on the weekend as 37,863 fans filled Villa Park Stadium, the highest attendance of the season so far. Liverpool, their worst start to the campaign, 9 points, the worst start in 38 years. And in the 1954 season, they ended up relegated. Could that be a bad omen for Graham Souness's men? Well, Liverpool were trying to move on. However, it would be inevitable they'd bump into ex-players with Dean Saunders, Steve Staunton and Ray Houghton starting for the Villains. Liverpool did not suffer fools, however, and despite injuries sustained to Barnes, McManaman and Rush, they invested £500,000 to sign Torben Picnic from Copenhagen. And for a while, it looked like Liverpool had things under control after they went 1-0 up from a goal from Mark Walters. However, if Liverpool were thinking it would be a picnic, it would be anything but, as Dean Saunders levelled the scoreline on 44 minutes, rebounding a shot from Steve Froggatt. Things went bad quickly for the Reds as Daly and Atkinson made it 2-1 after some great build-up play from Houghton and Parker. Things then went from bad to worse as a Dean Saunders shot went through David James's legs to make it 3-1 to the Villains. And if it couldn't get any worse, a day that Graham Souness and I'm sure Liverpool fans worldwide wanted to forget, Gary Parker made it 4-1 not looking good for Souness's men. However, Ronnie Rosenthal offered some brief hope after he headed home a bobble cross from Don Hutchinson. And I'm sure in what will be in many VHS goals and gaffes compilations to come, Ronnie Rosenthal goes round Nigel Spink. He's only got the goal to beat and he hits the crossbar. Absolutely unbelievable. Ronnie Rosenthal has since admitted that despite missing, it did put him on the map, however, for all the wrong reasons. It ended 4-2 at Villa Park with Villa fans chanting, "We want five, we want five," and I'm sure they did. After the game, it was reported that Villa had needed a strike partnership very badly, and it appeared that Dean Saunders and Daniel Atkinson could do the job. Liverpool, however, it was a day for Souness to forget. Liverpool's 4th defeat in 9, and things didn't look good for the Redmen. But here at Villa Park, it ended Aston Villa 4, Liverpool 2.
And next up, we've got the Super Sunday game, which is Chelsea travelling to Main Road to take on Manchester City.
Man City line up with Tony Coton in goal, a back four of Keith Curle, Terry Phelan, Ian Brightwell and Andy Hill, who's coming in for the injured Michel Vonk. In midfield, Peter Reid and Gary Flitcroft, Fitzroy Simpson and Rick Holden out wide, with David White and Mike Shearer up front. On the bench, Martin Margetson, David Brightwell and Adi Mike. For Chelsea, Kevin Hitchcock in goal, coming in for Dave Besant, who I believe has had his last chance now at Chelsea after all the errors he's made this season. Frank Sinclair coming in for Anthony Barnes, David Lee and Mal Donaghy. In midfield, Gareth Hall, Eddie Newton, Nigel Spackman and Dennis Wise, with Robert Fleck and Mick Harford up front. On the bench, Alec Chamberlain, Graham Stewart and John Spencer. That's all 3 strikers Chelsea signed in the summer in today's squad. In one of the most boring games of football the Premier League has ever produced, there was only one moment to report from, and that was in the 40th minute when Chelsea got themselves an indirect free kick in the box. Dennis Wise laid it off to David Lee, it smashed the Man City wall, and Mick Harford was there to turn it home for his 5th goal of the season and make it 1-0 to Chelsea.
Well, yeah, that wasn't the Super Sunday that we all expected. And funnily enough, the papers slated Sky's choice of game, saying how it was the only programme on the telly that would actually send you to sleep. Thousands tuned in to be disappointed in what was a truly awful game. Nevertheless, Chelsea take the 3 points, 1-0 to Chelsea. And the Monday night special, we've got Coventry City travelling to the City Ground to take on Nottingham Forest. And Nottingham Forest, well, surely it's not going to be 7 defeats in a row, is it?
To try and avoid that, they've named Mark Crossley in goal, Carl Tyler, Stuart Pearce and Brian Laws at the back. In midfield, Gary Crosby, Ray McKinnon coming in for Steve Chettle, Toddy Orlickson in for Kingsley Black, Roy Keane and Scott Gemmell. Then with Nigel Clough behind Gary Bannister up front. On the bench, Andy Marriott, Kingsley Black and Lee Glover. For Coventry, Steve Grizovic in goal, Andy Pearce, Kenny Sansom, Peter Atherton and Brian Burrows at the back. The midfield 2 with Lee Hurst, Lloyd McGrath, and then the 4 strikers running around up front of Robert Rosario, Kevin Gallagher, John Williams and Peter and Love. On the bench, Jonathan Gould, Phil Babb and Terry Fleming. The first bit of action we got today was a beautiful indirect free kick in that box for Coventry. Pearce was ready like Linford for some reason. Burrows laid it off. Andy Pearce struck it. It hit Robert Rosario somewhere. Look at him running off, claiming that in the back. 1-0 Coventry. It went to Rosario. Then, in the 69th minute, a corner came in from Forest. It got headed out as far as Scott Gemmell. He nutted it back in, and there was Nigel Clough with the overhead acrobatics to save a point for Forest, and of course his dad as well.
And they've done it. Nottingham Forest have got a point. Go on, the Forest. Nigel Clough gets a equalising goal just to get them a point, just 1 point. But we have to celebrate this. Forest is terrible. They're at the bottom of the league, but they've played a decent team in Coventry today, and they've got a point.
And that brings us to the end of episode 9 of Relive the League. Thanks again to the very, very, very funny James Allen. Please don't forget to go follow him on Twitter at JamesAllen27. And of course, the superb Culture Ultras podcast at the Cultures Pod. Please go check them out. On to the league tables. Norwich flying. No other words to say about it. Coventry, Blackburn, Man U, they all faltered this week, only getting a point. They've all got to catch them Canaries. QPR and Middlesbrough, even Villa, you'd say, all exceeding expectations up at that end of the table. Chelsea even as well, they're a box-standard mid-table club, aren't they? Then we go into kind of obscure mid-table nothingness and look at the lower half.
Yeah, and in the bottom half we've got Nottingham Forest, bottom of the pile, 4 points in 8 games. They have got a game in hand, but they are struggling at the moment. Southampton as well, they've slipped into the bottom 3. And the only other team down there which seems to be struggling in free fall is Liverpool, who are on a horrible run at the minute.
Horrible.
But I think they might get a bit better next week from because they're playing Wimbledon next week.
Wimbledon at home, yeah, it's points in it.
So I think that'll get their season back on track. But that's the league for this week. And onto the goal scorers, we've got Alan Shearer at top of the lot, 9 goals. Absolutely flying is the man. David White on 7, and then obviously 6 and 5 for the rest that are on there. So that is a wrap for episode 9 then. We've had 5 1-all draws, 3 6-goal thrillers, 3 red cards, all in the same game too. And we had a bit of everything really, didn't we, Mike?
It was a lovely week of football. Proper footy. But, yeah, that's it for another week and for another day. I'll see you later.